Meeting is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Johnston?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Haney?
Here.
Councilmember Blatz?
Here.
Councilmember Franzina? Here. Councilmember Wyrick?
Here.
Chair Firestone?
Here.
Commissioner Murphy?
Here.
Commissioner Intner?
Here.
Commissioner Comerford?
Here.
Commissioner Jacobson?
Present.
Commissioner Taylor?
Here.
Okay, we have 2 quorums. So how would you like to proceed? The agenda, let's do the pledge here. Hand over heart. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay,
Well,
John, you
good
wanna
evening. Yeah,
tell us what topics of concern?
yeah. So we as a commission have put together a presentation that
Okay.
I'll be walking through, and we can start. Oh, what happened here? There we go. Okay. So as is tradition, we'll give you an update on parks and recreation programs. And then we have a list of discussion items, and we've highlighted a couple that we want to spend the most time on. So quickly, I'll go through parks and programs updates from the past year. The Boyd Center turned 115. There's a display in the game room commemorating that. We've updated the Sarzotti Park master plan to reflect what was approved by council, specifically the keeping the Boyd Center and gym as is, and leaving the rest as was proposed. And we'll talk more about the master plan as we go through this. But just to give you a sense of what's on the timeline for improvements at Sarzotti Park. As you know, we had the picnic area remodel, the new picnic areas last year. It's been quite popular. The multi-sport courts, which we're going to talk more about this evening, is in the CIP for this year and the coming year. And then a new playground, which was a big element in the master plan, is in the CIP for 2020 through 2023, the planning and development. Ball field renovations later on, and then a water element, which is another element from the master plan to be determined. We haven't put that in the CIP yet, and it's a lower priority than the multi-sport courts from our perspective. Community partnerships. We've discussed in the last couple of years the importance of partnering with other organizations in the community that share some of our objectives. So we've been using our media to promote activities at the library, the Help of Ojai Little House, programs that are run jointly with the rec department and other organizations like the Bravo Music and Arts Camp that we had over the summer, and then also partnering with the school district. We run after school programs that this year one of the elementary schools. We're using the high school, an instructor there, and their facilities for a pottery class. We run a tennis program in the schools. We had an open house in the spring. Of course, the rec department is evolving with the interests and resources available. So some of the new programs offered this year: Mandarin Chinese, ukulele, the music and arts camp that I had mentioned, guitar for adults, and some of the programs that have gone away, the Minor Oaks after school program. The school itself is now taking care of that internally. Volleyball and flag football camps and yoga for adults are no longer offered. I'll pause in a minute if you guys want to talk about anything. The aquatics program this summer, we had 8 weeks of public swim, up from 6 from previous summers. So we were using Villanova's pool in the mornings for swim lessons, and then the Nordhoff High School pool in the afternoons for public swim. Yeah, summer camp remains popular, is very popular this summer. Average 52 participants per day. Parent movie night out, also very popular. This is something the rec department holds once a month from 6 to 9 on a Friday evening for kids 5 to 13. It's $12. They get pizza and a movie. They can play in the game room, and pretty well attended, averaging 44 participants per event. I mentioned the after-school program. So this year, the rec department is running the after-school program at Topa Topa. And last year was at Topa Topa, last school year, and Miners Oaks Elementary. This is for any of the students in the elementary. It tends to be the younger students. It's $12 a day. Last year, between the two schools, was averaging 50 participants a day. Gymnastics program, very popular. About 200 participants. I mentioned, well, in the CIP for this coming year, there's $10,000 allocated for new gymnastics equipment. So that's going to be used for a new floor for the floor routines. Tennis program, quite popular. And this gives you a rough sense of participation over the years. To take this graph with a grain of salt, because the numbers in it reflect transactions with the recreation department. So that could be for signing up for a 6-week course or a 1-week camp or a single drop-in event. But it gives you a general sense of activity levels. We kind of separated out the after-school program because that's a large number of transactions, but it's fairly different than the rest of what the rec department offers. Okay, so I'll pause here. That's the Parks and Rec Department update, if there's any questions or comments, and then we can move on to some of the discussion items.
The after-school program still growing beyond, or are you at capacity, you think?
Sophocles?
Right now, we're, as Ryan, Commissioner Chair Firestone mentioned, we're only at Topa Topa, and the numbers have been pretty strong just at that
Obviously.
one site. Yeah, it's about 30 to 35 per day there for our after-school kids. They just obviously go right from their school day to our after-school kid on site.
Right. So I was just wondering, is there growth there, or do you think this is
Yeah, I
this
think.
plateau, or is that going to keep growing? That's what I'm trying to.
Well, the actual, just the after-school at Topa?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been.
Or
it's-
at other schools, maybe.
Compared to last year, we probably averaged 20, 25 kids. Now we're at 30, 35. So is that the question did that answer
Part of it, I also wondered,
the question?
is it, is any thought of, and maybe this is completely out of bounds, any sense of outreach to the one school element? Isn't there one elementary school that the Ventura district has down in the Oakview area?
Sunset?
Yeah, is any possibility of talking with them, maybe?
We could. We haven't shopped.
asking.
We haven't shopped it out to
What?
them, but
To do an after-school program at that school, too.
Sunset in
What do you mean,
Oakview.
for us to provide it, or?
I'm just asking.
Oh.
Yeah. We haven't reached out to them or asked if it was a need.
Because, I mean, we
for them,
provide, we're a city agency, but we're providing services outside the city limits for the Ojai Valley as a whole.
but, we-
Just asking.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
What type of programming are you offering in the after-school programs?
so we provide homework help. Of course, they get to have free play. They do
Crafts.
some arts and crafts.
My
So- daughter
goes, so they know there's
Yeah.
indoor and outdoor activities. So kids who want to stay inside, there's a dedicated room for them with toys and books in it, and then the
And
playground.
how many
outside.
counselors or how many,
There's 3 staff throughout the 4 hours, so we run it from 1:30 to 5:30. Yeah.
I had a couple more questions, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can wait. Do you want to ask your questions?
yeah, who does the picnic area maintenance, and who monitors the conditions of the picnic areas?
Our Public Works Department primarily takes care of the maintenance on that, and from time to time, we have in-house staff at the rec that will pressure wash the areas occasionally, use a electric leaf blower to blow off those areas from time to
I'm
time.
glad to hear that so quickly.
My question for that is, the maintenance staff wouldn't necessarily know that there's a problem there or a condition that needs to be looked at unless recreation is actually looking at it.
Right.
And I walk that park almost every weekend.
Sure.
And we did an incredible job on those new picnic areas. Aside from we're not washing the tables and we're not washing the concrete. And I know that, we have a water concern,
Right.
but having ants and having Kool-Aid and having soda pop and having other things that are degrading that area, I just think that maybe staff needs to walk it and write some type of a request to Greg's staff for some maintenance on it.
Yeah, I mean, true enough, we do go out there before each weekend, and we post the person who's going to rent that particular area for the weekend. And at that time, if it looks like what you described as something that needs to be addressed, there would either be a maintenance work order placed, or again, we'd have internal staff do it. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose it's potential that it gets overlooked from time to time, possibly.
Is there a sense of creating an inspection sheet, just like you should have for your play equipment, that someone has to actually physically look at it and identify? Like, for instance, we've got beautiful barbecues with beautiful stonework.
Yes.
Is someone addressing that? I've been there, and the inserts in the barbecue have been almost upside down. So again, I'm just looking at the fact that we put a lot of money into this site.
Sure.
The community loves it, and I think it just behooves us to look at the maintenance on it and address that at least on a monthly basis. I would say weekly, but I could see a monthly basis.
Yeah,
Maybe on Monday
Agreed.
after, it's been used.
after the park's been used, yeah.
See how.
Yeah, I mean, we have our Public Works Department out there once a week maintaining the entire facility, mowing the lawn,
I think this
checking the whole facility out. I mean, I don't know if they have that on their
I think
list
this
of
is a
things to
joint
detail.
effort. That's all I'm trying
Yeah.
to say is the
Yeah.
maintenance staff is there and they're moving.
You could hand them the condition checklist.
Right.
Sure.
So I'm
Yeah.
just, it's a suggestion.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I understand the gymnastics program is still the #1 program at the recreation department. Have we ever thought of looking off-site to get them their own gymnastics center?
We haven't really entertained it or looked into
Okay.
it.
Because the majority of us, well, maybe the majority of us don't know that, but there's a major conflict during basketball season about set-up, takedown. And that was one of the issues that was addressed in the new recreation building, was to create a gymnastic area for its own physical use. So if we're not going to do that, then I have a question regarding that too. But why aren't we looking for something off-site? Maybe something that maybe one of the schools has. Maybe something in one of the industrial parks here might have a building that could adequately fit all of the gymnastic equipment in it. Like I'm hearing we're getting a new mat.
Mhm.
So we're gonna roll that mat up and unroll it on what, a daily basis during basketball season? Or are we gonna leave the mat down and play basketball on it?
It's not quite a daily basis. It's 3 days a week.
Well,
Okay, I stand
distinction
corrected.
without a difference.
I stand
Yeah.
corrected.
Yeah.
Wait,
But
we
that's
should
all
also
I'm trying to
comment.
say is, it just might behoove us to look at that as another opportunity.
Right. I mean, when I say I haven't looked into it totally, yeah, I haven't priced things out or gone, but we certainly have had internal conversations with the gymnastics coordinator to say, we talked about Bryant Street area in those bigger industrial buildings, and but we just thought, the potential rental costs of that, would that be cost effective to go out and rent a space like
Well,
that?
Part of,
or-
part of what's really
No, it's true.
exceptional, but part of what's really exceptional about this program is the cost and the access. It's very different than typical gymnastic programs. I mean, this is unheard of to have something this affordable with this quality of instruction. So it's not to say that it isn't worth looking into, but for me, the trade-off to make it more expensive to put it in its own facility, it would be a loss
Again,
if you
I'm-
have to raise the prices
I'm
significantly.
throwing it out there as a look and see. You
No,
don't know.
no, that's fine.
You don't
I
know
just-
what you don't know. It's that simple.
But we just have to be careful of understanding what is really great about the program while we do that,
Mm-hmm.
to be really clear on what our goals are.
Right, and the impacts of the program. So, and then obviously something very dear to me is flag football. And why are we not
Randy-
running a flag?
Randy, before you go to that, let's go back to gymnastics for just a moment. I attended some meetings in the past month with representatives of the Y who were invited up to the valley to talk about the possibilities. And so they're going through a process, Randy, of looking at, I think they're talking, they said they usually have like a minimum 5-acre site. They say, okay, good luck in the Ojai Valley. But there are some places, so this would be a good thing to
Actually, I'm in
suggest to them.
conversations with them too.
Okay, well, good. So that's a place to think about alternative sites, yeah.
So, I know your flag football program used to be ran out of the grammar schools. Am I correct?
It was at the park.
Right, but didn't each grammar school?
But they would,
Grammar school bring a team
they
in?
would each have their own team, yes.
Yeah, you were
But
talking
run
about-
at the park, yes.
Well, and some of them were on their own campuses practicing, but this was quite a while ago, Randy. I think
Yeah.
this was back when each school
Right.
site had its own team, yeah.
So I'm just going back to you. So what you're saying is there's not enough applicants to have
To
a
make
flag
teams.
football program.
That would be correct, yes.
And then I guess the last thing on my list is the facility. You did a revision of the Sarzotti master plan.
Yes.
I'm just not quite sure that council directed you to remove the new building and keep the old building in place. I don't think I was part of that conversation.
Oh.
Yeah, we did.
I don't think anyone directed anyone. I think what we said was it may not be in the, in next year's budget to actually do a building. But I didn't hear that we're going to.
No, I don't think that's
Give
accurate.
up on it. I'm just saying,
I-
so,
I don't think that's.
so if we're not gonna do that, I'm easy going tonight. If we're not gonna.
What it would be like when he gets really good.
Okay.
If we're not going to do that, the question that I have then is, what are we going to do for the restoration, the renovation, and addressing what the needs are to create, a 2,000-year version of a recreation center? And has there been any thoughts from the commission in regards to that? Actually looking at the internal mechanisms of that facility and asking ourselves, what could we do if we're going to keep it to make it a better, useful facility? I'm just,
Well, it's a big question.
Yeah.
I
There you
don't
go.
have a one-sentence answer to
Yeah.
that.
no, I don't,
And
I
a
don't
bigger-
need it. I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just throwing that out there.
We can address it this coming year.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, Susan,
All
you've
right.
been patiently waiting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you all done, Randy?
I'm still taking notes.
So I saw on your list that having a discussion on a water element in Sarzotti Park. Can you also have a discussion of a water element in Libbey Park? Because on a hot day, unofficially, the most popular feature of Libbey Park for the kids under, 9 and under is the fountain.
Right.
And now that I have a little granddaughter, I'm in it myself. People say, "Is this all right?" I'm serious about that because we do have the mister, but it is so hot, and there are so many kids in there. It just seems that we need to seriously explore that, and I'd be willing to help in any way possible.
Yeah, well, we
Right.
can bring that up. That did come up
Yeah.
during the Libbey playground renovation process. I know there were
Yeah.
some technical challenges with adding more
Yeah, it doesn't have to
significant
be like a
water
full-fledged
feature.
kiddie pool, but just something, I know there's things that they even have in shopping centers, we could research it. I'm not saying that it should be the same as in a shopping center, but something that's doable.
Right, yeah. no, this
That the
is-
kids
this
can
is-
safely splash in.
This is good input.
Have
and,
fun,
yeah, we can look into it again.
Okay, and then, I don't know if this is time to bring it up, but I know you have so much on your plate, but day after day, people are crying out for a more centrally located Dog Park. And I'm the, what do you call it, the moderator of the Ojai Valley Animal Kingdom page. We have about 3,000, 4,000 members, and it's a constant topic, like, can we just rent some land somewhere, you know? So I don't know if that's under your recreation or something else.
Well, I guess you're all looking at me, so, it's not an area that we've been directed to look at or explored. I can't speak for the Park and Recreation Commission. I don't know if the commission has explored looking into that at all. We certainly could. We haven't been contacted directly by any of those constituents, so.
Okay, we'll work on that. Okay, thank you. That was my question, yeah.
I'd like to respond to
Okay.
that particular point.
Good.
To me, that's yet another example,
Uh-huh.
and I'm going to talk more on this later, because I know you have more ongoing topics you want to get to, but that's another example of why I think we need to think expansively
Yeah.
in this new century of reinventing ourselves, like 100 years ago we reinvented ourselves, and we need to look at that area that the County Parks Department, really, it's just a stepchild to them.
Yeah.
And could meet a lot of needs for us if we did looked at a long-term lease of that, and take down the impediment to attendance there in terms of the fee per use. And
you're talking about
additional
Soul
playing-
Park now.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, part of the objection is having to pay that fee to go use the park, use the dog park.
I don't know that that's
Okay.
part of the objection. The
And it's not
objection is
maintained well.
The location is.
And
the-
it's not maintained well.
Yeah.
All right? Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that opens up a broader question of, we ought to be looking at, and I'm going to talk more about that later, about some of the
Okay.
broader, creative, large vision things that we could do with those kinds of measures. Because trying to find another location might just be an endless discussion without a result.
Yes.
Whereas, we took,
Maybe
we
expand
looked
and
at
improve
some
what
of the
we have.
functions that we are unmet and needs that are unmet that could be taken advantage of if we did get maybe control of that particular piece of land. We could wrap in some of maybe the particular objections and achieve a better result.
Okay, thank you.
Just a comment.
Any other questions or comments? This is really helpful, by the way, as far as kind of
Yeah,
guiding
my
us
comment
for
would
the
be
next few
that
months.
if we're going to be expansive, we should be thinking in terms of not a new idea, but a valley-wide recreation district, because the city of Ojai, as I say, 4.3 square miles, cannot be the center and provide everything for everybody in the two valleys. That also goes even for other governmental functions, that as long as we're providing it, then nobody seems to have a whole lot of interest in joining us. I think we should be considering a partnership. If they really want it, then they need to kind of join up, or at least create a district like they have over, in the Conejo Valley or Simi. Then you'd have the tax base to be able to support these kind of activities.
Right, and we do, I'll mention
list
that,
coming
it's
up.
on our list, yes. That's as far as we've gotten. but
That
it's
was
on our
directed
list.
to my colleagues on the council, not to the commission. I know you guys have been talking about it for years.
Okay, well, maybe I'll move on.
One
Yeah,
comment
sure.
with Mr. Mayor. Well, your meeting with the Y, maybe that would be a real great source to have this kind of umbrella for everybody.
Right, well, I don't know, the people who initiated the meeting, I don't know, the one Randy attended, but the one I attended, a couple of them was initiated by people outside the city who recognized the need for a cooling pool or a swimming pool, because what we have is, you guys are doing a lot better than they used to do, even with the pools that exist, by getting access to them. But that was the impetus to start the conversation. The head of this particular division of the Y, they have a whole method by which they evaluate these things, and they're doing that right now. And that was part of the conversation was, could we do something that would be large enough that would serve the upper, lower valleys, and then where would you put it? But at least you'd have a tax base and a way in which to do it, rather than, I keep hearing that our population is shrinking in the city and that the school district's enrollment is going down, and yet we're expanding. And I'm thinking, well, maybe we need to figure out how we can, where everyone's who's using the service is coming from, and let's get them to join up, and maybe we can get it done. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so I'm going to move on. So ongoing commission topics, I've highlighted a couple here that hopefully we'll spend the most time talking about. The multi-sport courts at Sarzotti Park and the Libbey Bowl lawn was a lead-in about the CIP and the Sarzotti master plan and a couple other topics that we'll go over as well. So the CIP, I know this slide's kind of hard to read, so I'm going to fast forward to this one. This is listing by year the various parks items in the CIP, so we can see in this coming year, starting to work on the improvements to the Libbey Park restrooms and sewer line, and then some roof improvements, the Boyd Center, the gymnastics equipment that I mentioned, replacing the lights for the baseball fields at Sarzotti Park, and then starting on the multi-sport courts, which we'll be talking about. And then going forward, more work on the restrooms and sewer line. And then we still have the bike park slotted in the CIP. That movement has stalled, but still a placeholder for it. And then kind of more roof work in the Boyd Center, and then the Sarzotti playground, which I mentioned would be ramping up in a couple of years. And the Sarzotti master plan, so our understanding
You talk to those two guys.
from the council's decision was to exclude any changes to the Boyd Center, the gymnasium in the plan. So that's kind of the revision that we made. So we have a drawing to work from and a plan to work from. And like I mentioned, we're currently focused on the multi-sport court, which I'll show you on the next slide, but that's our top priority. And then going forward, the playground and ball field renovation in a few years.
A quick question.
Mhm.
What's our plan for irrigation, upgrading irrigation on the ball field renovations?
That's really probably in the hands of our public works
Okay,
director.
all right,
to-
thank you.
Yeah.
Now, wait, when you talk about that, are you talking about the actual ball diamonds, or are you talking the turf areas?
Turf areas.
The turf areas are watered probably as efficiently as they can right now.
Well, there's still overhead sprinklers, right?
Right, and you're not gonna go to an underground system, it'd be way too costly. But more importantly is they're using low precipitation heads. That they've upgraded and they've done pretty much everything you can do to maintain fields of that size.
I was just asking.
Yeah, but the ball diamonds themselves, a lot of recreation parks programs would put large turf heads actually on the ball diamonds, and water those on a nightly basis to keep the dust down and to keep the playing surface a little moister than what it is right now. But we're still using a quick coupler system, which is a quick coupler at the middle of the diamond, and smooching and leveling the base paths, and smooching and leveling home plate, and dragging the diamonds on a regular basis, so.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, other comments?
Okay, so
Nice job.
like I mentioned, our highest priority from the master plan for Sarzotti is these multi-sport courts in the southeast corner of the park where the Quonset hut currently is. And the plan has 2 courts that could be used for both basketball and futsal, which is a hard court soccer game.
And if we get those built, and we'll shut down futsal that's going on in Lower Libbey?
That's part of the intent, is to provide a designated
There's
space
much of that as
for
there
that.
was, but I guess there's a pickup
It's
game now and then.
Still
I see.
happening from time to time, yes.
Yeah. And so on this topic, the last several months, the commission spent a lot of time at the park making sure that the location of the courts in the master plan and the orientation of the courts was optimal. So we thought about different orientations. We thought about splitting up the 2 courts to really get them out of the way of the baseball diamonds as much as possible. And we concluded that really where they are is the best spot for them. The staying out of the drip line of all of the mature oak trees is a big challenge in the park. And that corner and that orientation is really the one spot where we don't really get into the outfield of the baseball diamonds.
The only downside to that location, if you can go back, if you notice that the majority of tennis courts that are rebuilt are always running north and south, never east and west. These are running east and west, which means
Yes.
if they're played in midday, one team is gonna have the sun in their eyes and one team isn't.
Yeah.
So that's the only downside to this. I understand where that's at, and I was on the commission when a lot of this went through, so it is a great location. That's the only downside.
Right. Thank you for bringing that up.
East-west
And that's,
orientation.
that kind of, we spent several months working on that issue. And actually, just by rotating the courts so they're facing north-south, it cuts into the outfield of the baseball diamonds quite a bit more. And so that's, we decided it was, the trade-off was worth it to have kind of suboptimal orientation.
And
but
tree removal, I think, was the
Tuck.
other issue. Right?
Yeah,
Sorry,
staff,
you need to speak to the mic.
Oh,
Tree removal, I think, was the other issue that we considered when we moved it.
Well, with the orientation, I think is really mostly kind of cutting into the outfields.
and staff was
But
very
it
helpful.
did
We had
tree-
story
she's right,
poles,
trees.
and they took it and walked it off and spray painted it. So, I mean, we really looked at it.
Yeah.
If you went out there while this was all going on, you could see exactly how far it was gonna go into the outfield, and it just didn't work.
I asked this question, I think the last time we all got together, but is there any opportunity over at Nordhoff High School? It seems like I got great parking. Do they not have lights on the asphalt basketball courts and the tennis courts over there?
They do not.
Yeah. So is there any, maybe we partner with them and provide the lights, and maybe, would that be, if
It's a
those,
very different kind of court.
is it?
This futsal / this multi-sport court is not just a piece of hard, asphalt or something to shoot baskets on. It's really more than that, because it's serving more than one sport, and the needs of each sport is a little bit different. And so that really wouldn't solve our futsal problem.
Well,
and-
but the tennis courts over there, how much do they get used at night, or?
I can't speak to any of that, and I don't
Anyway,
know
I
about
just
their
was
lights
curious
either.
if that had been
But
looked
from a
at as
programming standpoint too, part of what this would do is really expand and allow the basketball program for the youth to have places to practice, because we're really at a place where we don't have enough practice space for the current, I'm speaking
would-
for you,
yeah.
but for current
No,
programs, we
it's
don't
true.
have
It
enough
would-
practice space. So
well-
this is on-site, and the kids could be
Right.
working in the gym and out there, so.
Right.
Right,
And
the fact that it's on site, and, as a basketball player, asphalt isn't the greatest surface to be playing basketball
I
on.
recognize that. I'm
Yeah.
just thinking, if you're going to build something new, as a partnership, I know you guys do that anyway on other programs with
Right.
the school district, but we aren't going to change where the sun comes up and goes down. And so going to Randy's point, if there's not enough room to put more courts there. Now, maybe we could put one in there and have some other place where there would be some relief. I don't know. That's just a thought. It's a-
Right. I
As
mean-
Bill would say. just
I
a
think
thought.
also from a programming standpoint, Sarzotti is our main active recreation park in Ojai. Libbey doesn't have the active recreation. It has the playground, which is wonderful, but Sarzotti is where people go to play their sports, the families come. We have the playground, the kids are out there. So keeping it central to where everyone's using it and can access it without having to drive mostly is really, to me, quite important. And it supports the mission of the recreation and providing that for youth. So I think the programming portion too, and the reason for two, from my perspective, is that you can program one and leave one open. Because it's ultimately, we're hoping to serve both programming and drop-in. And so having two allows that.
Right.
Yeah, and.
But
the
you
fact
still have
that-
what Randy
right.
pointed out as far as the usability of them, at least in the daytime. Now, maybe at night it won't make any difference, but I presume.
Well, I think if you think about when basketball season is, which is in the winter, the sun is very low on the horizon at that point, so it's not going to affect
Okay.
running east and west that much. I mean, I've been a basketball guy,
I know,
as you
I was
know,
gonna say.
my whole life.
Yeah.
So, and I was one of the ones that talked to Eric first about adjusting the direction of the courts, and it just, once we measured it out, it
Okay,
wouldn't
so you
work.
figure
So
on balance, it's better, yeah.
It's not
To have
perfect.
two courts, yeah, okay.
There's no perfect,
Okay.
but I think this is the best use of the space.
Very good.
So I had a question for those courts. The number one sport for people over 55 is pickleball.
Mm-hmm.
Is what?
Is pickleball.
Pickleball.
Pickleball?
Pickle.
Oh,
like a
pickleball, yeah.
And the only reason I know that is my sister is pretty close to a national champion. She's phenomenal at it. But aside from that, is this court available for that activity? And have we thought about, as far as a recreational program, some type of pickleball activity in the community?
So there is pickleball going on in the community at Matilaha.
Yes.
Not run by us.
Sounds like a
But
news
Tim Kraut
story.
runs it through the rec department, or on his own. No, he
Over
came and gave us a
50 to
demonstration.
5
Right.
playing Pickleball.
Wednesdays and Thursdays, I think,
As
at
far as kind
Matilaha.
of
What was his name
including,
again?
it's
Tim Kraut.
Tim Kraut.
He runs it Wednesdays and Thursdays at Matilaha in the late afternoon, early evening.
We haven't discussed kind of including that use for these courts, though.
As a matter of fact, I was just there last night playing a game of pickleball with Tim Kraut and his group. So they've actually approached the city to use one of our Libbey courts to have pickleball in those courts, and we are in discussions now about them possibly,
Wonderful.
I'm not permanently converting, but adding pickleball lines, because you can put 2 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court. So we're, again, talking it through with the tennis, OVTC, and getting their input and with our own instructor, but we're moving potentially close to an agreement to let them use one of the upper courts.
Well, I also.
Yeah. Experimentally.
Correct me, but I believe Soul Park already has pickleball.
Well, they have paddleball. I think
Yeah.
they're different sports,
It's
but
a little different.
Little
And then the
different.
other thing would be Matilaha Junior High actually has their tennis courts that are never used. So again, it'd be interesting to see how, from a recreational standpoint, how we could enhance that. Again, it is a growing sport, and it's an excellent sport for people Johnny's age and my age, actually.
And half my age,
Yes,
apparently at
half my age.
55.
It's for people of all ages.
No, but it's a phenomenal sport.
I will definitely agree with you there. I'm not a pickleball player, I'm a tennis player.
Right.
But my sister, like your sister, plays out in Fort Collins, Colorado, and she's a real champion as well.
Yep.
And we have discussed over and over again that many tennis players are younger than pickleball players. But the pickleball players, it really fills a really important part of physical life if they
It does.
do it. So I'm with you on that. Yeah.
It
You
sounds
don't
like
have to
there's
run.
activity.
But I like running.
As
You're
far
right.
as Sophocles.
It's a short, quick sport with not a lot of large court side to side to side.
That's right.
It's real interesting.
Right. So
Can I
we
say
had
that-
a presentation at one of our commission meetings recently on pickleball. Like I mentioned, it is happening at Matilaha currently, and it sounds like there's some talk of bringing it to Libbey Park. as well.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting question too with Matilaha and their court and what's going on, and maybe I agree with the partnership idea at Matilaha. And they also, I don't know, their bond money is already all spent and there's never enough, but possibly if the city could partner to do something small, maybe they could, maybe it could be a joint effort, if funds could come from both sides to take that court and make it the pickleball court. Because, it could really use some attention, that court, but.
Well, the nice thing about the tennis courts is there's lights already there. So the
Yes.
ability to play at night
Yes.
is a
Right.
huge
Huge.
bonus, particularly in the
It
summer.
is.
That is their goal,
It
is to
is.
have a
Yep.
place to
It's
go
the perfect spot.
It is.
with the time change.
It is.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, I'll keep us moving forward. So back to the multi-sport
Yes.
courts. Our recommendation to the council is to move forward with the courts as they are laid out in the master plan. We're also recommending to build both at the same time. We had discussed the option of building one. The funds that are currently allocated in the CIP would be likely sufficient for, and then building another one later. But the kind of economies of doing both at the same time seem to argue for doing them both and looking for additional funding
So
to
extra
get that
funding
done.
source right now, the 3,000 and the 150?
Yeah,
You're
that's
asking
what's
for
currently in the
another
CIP.
100,000?
That's right. Yeah. And we also, maybe a minor thing, but recommended that the conduit for lighting be included in the project. So if in the future, if there's interest in installing lights, it's an easy upgrade.
Absolutely, always do that,
Yeah.
if you can.
So that's our recommendation to you all. Any more talk on the multi-sport courts?
Somewhat related, if I may, and that is that I believe the master plan includes, I know Sage and I talked about this, getting rid of that dumpster enclosure near the concession stand, and I believe the master plan is to remove that. And so my question is, why isn't it?
Yeah. And I have talked to Ms.
The dumpster removal
The dumpster enclosure that's taking up valuable parking space,
This
not to
is,
mention being an eyesore.
and an access
Near the
issue.
concession stand and an
Right.
access problem. It's part of the master plan to remove.
in this area.
Incremental cost of removal seems to be pretty small, so why haven't we already included that in our plan of work and get it done?
Yep.
And, yeah,
So to that,
Well, we-
necessarily, it's been brought up.
we did
It
bring
has.
that up with
Okay, we talked
with
about it,
Mr.
let's get it
Grant.
done. I'm just curious.
Well, yeah, so we brought this up with Mr. Grant. That was our recommendation as well.
Well, can we get it in the next year's CIP program if this is part of the master plan? And
I think if the request comes from council, that would
you
work.
guys can request it too.
We did.
Okay,
We
oh, it
did.
wasn't put in?
No, well, Mr. Grant had some good reasons, some practical reasons for
I'd like to hear
leaving
what
the
they are.
structure there.
I also don't know that it was, I didn't really think to put it in as a CIP. I didn't think it was
No.
that big a project.
The cost
But
It
is
doesn't
I
need to be a
understand.
CIP
minimal.
unless,
Okay.
then we don't need to wait for the CIP to get it done.
Right, I just didn't think it was.
Just
that big.
asking why we don't do the simple things.
I have the same question.
We'll have it removed this weekend.
Well, it's not because we're running out of things to do, so, I'll be honest with you. I mean, that's the simple answer on why some of these things don't get done. It's because we've got other priorities as staff.
Well,
But we'll look into it.
sledgehammers.
We'll look into it.
Yeah, I think in this case, Mr. Grant had some reasons for not removing it. It wasn't just like he didn't have time to do it. There
And I
was
don't know
some
what those are,
valid
but I'll explore it as
Well,
you
at
say,
first I
manager.
thought you were talking about the new trail.
No,
just
that's because we finished the new one.
Well, no, I was saying.
We
because
got
that
this
new one-
eyesore, which is just-
Well, that new one is an eyesore too.
Well, now, Randy.
No, I would agree with you, yeah. But it-
Okay, well, but it's done.
It's
and-
hard to make them attractive.
Well, then let's take one eyesore away at the other
We
end.
concur.
Okay, so I'm going to move on. The other topic that we wanted to spend some time on was the Libbey Bowl lawn, which council members Haney and Wyrick had asked the commission to look into. So there's interest in raising the elevation of the Libbey Bowl lawn to improve the viewing of the stage area. So we've reviewed the proposed plan. The rec department staff ran an online survey to get public input. We received public comment at our August commission meeting and by email, and we've synthesized all of that. And there's a pretty broad spectrum of opinions in both the community and within our commission, ranging from the leave it alone to the fix it now. And so I tried to organize this along those lines. I would say that the distribution of opinions was fairly evenly spread, maybe a little bit less in the leave it alone camp, but plenty of people saying leave it alone.
Is it fair to say everyone recognizes the view is bad? The question is whether it's worth the money to fix.
Correct.
Well, you will see that there were some people that said it was
No,
fine.
I said the majority.
The majority,
The
yes.
view is bad.
Yes.
The disagreement of whether it's cost effective to fix it.
Well, some people saw that actually as a benefit
Yeah,
in the leave it
yeah.
alone camp, that kind of provided a space for dancing, laying down, letting kids run around, having bouncy houses, having food carts, things that you couldn't do if it was kind of
Raised up.
I don't
raised
understand
and
why-
sloped.
I don't understand the defeating of those purposes if it's more flattened.
If it
back
was
and then-
used
Those
more
are terraces,
heavily, the idea being, I mean, if the viewing was better, it'd be more crowded and there
What do you
wouldn't be
mean that
room
people would
to do
use it
those.
for the purpose for?
Well, what is the
Depends,
purpose?
yeah, right. Depends on your view of the
Yeah.
playground.
So,
Yeah, it is.
Or the thought was that it was more limited to music festival only, not maybe how they use it for Ojai Day. It's completely different. They use it for more of a youth attraction for.
Well, that's what I'm trying to
Multiple
understand. I'm not
activities.
trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to understand how fixing the view issue would take away from the use for other purposes.
Because it would be terraced, you'd have a smaller
sloped.
surface, and there would be the thought that we kind of discussed was that how would you, you would put up a railing. It takes away from the
Oh,
openness. You'd
okay,
have
I
to,
see what
you'd
you're
have to
saying.
ingress and egress on steps.
I got you, I got you.
And then it would
Okay.
also impact the trees and how much actual surface space you would
Right.
have because of the slope.
Right,
If you
because-
weren't gonna put a railing up, you'd have to.
Yeah,
way
and
back.
Because one of the things the music festival was saying they would really like, and other fundraising groups, is to have a larger flat area for the outdoor dining fundraisers. But then that causes the slope at the other end, so I understand, okay.
Right.
The big issue is the atmosphere, changing the atmosphere of what exists right now. There's a lot of freedom for families when they bring their
Yeah.
children, and that to me is extremely important. And, you know, if.
Sure, in terms of the design creating dangers for children.
Exactly
So the
right.
issue is if there could be a design that would restore the original experience that people felt a little betrayed by, didn't continue, without causing a hazard for children, that would be the design challenge. Okay.
Hazard
thank you.
for anyone, really, because there'd
Hazard
be
for
limited.
Right, and sorry,
limited
if,
access.
we do get into these details on the next slide, but just to give you the overview of kind of the spectrum of opinions. Yeah, you know, on the other side of the spectrum, some people said, yeah, the view's bad, let's do something now, and either it's a private good and it should be paid for by whoever's benefiting from that increased revenue, or it's a public good and the city should be doing it now to attract better events and provide a better experience for the low-cost ticket purchasers, which we heard from the music festival tend to be locals. So
Yeah,
at
it is
least
a lo-
in
yeah.
their experiences that
And it was a
locals-
design change because of ADA that caused a few problems, so that was a last-minute design change that people felt impacted by.
Right, right. But like I said, you know, much like the public, our commissioners' opinions kind of span this spectrum. And our recommendation for the council was that we approve of the concept of improving the lawn, but had some significant concerns.
Yeah.
Cost, safety, which we were just talking about. And then Mr. Grant also spoke to us about a lot of the kind of design technicalities that he's looked into. Kind of the use of needing some of the space for steps or ramps to get up to the higher elevation, infringement on that large oak tree, removing a sycamore tree that's there, needing safety lighting, and just a lot of technical challenges that would contribute to cost and eat into space. So proceed with caution, I'd say.
I got you.
is our
Thank you.
recommendation.
I would like
No,
to
thank
see-
you for the hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's why we sent it your way.
Yeah, and it's really used a lot, maybe not a lot, but that's the point. It's a nice private place where people often picnic or just sit in little groups and kids play when there's no events.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm one of the people that goes there. I love the peace and quiet
Me
there.
too.
Yeah, and people bring their dogs there. It's a great place, you know, to throw a ball for your dog and all
Yeah,
that.
and I think some of that use wouldn't change with the change in elevation. you know,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
during an
mean-
event.
Yeah, it's,
Some would.
let's leave it
Let's leave
alone.
I think that, I think that to say that those things wouldn't happen if we made changes doesn't make sense to me, because I think it depends on how we make the changes.
It's a
But I
design.
definitely think that
Right.
there was definitely a group represented who felt like those seats weren't very good anymore, and they would prefer them to be better. I think we can balance the needs of wanting to use it recreationally with improving it for the viewers who are there to see an event. And I think it's all about the
Yeah,
design.
I think the issue was there's a segment of the population that felt that a certain amount of trust was betrayed.
Yes, absolutely.
And the question is, should we do anything about it now?
Right, because as you said, the ADA issue came up at the very last minute. This wasn't the design. What we ultimately ended up on that lawn was never the intent for it.
Right.
It was by the designers, by the builders, by the community. The last minute change that made them make the ADA changes that they had to came at one of their last
Right.
walkthroughs with, in the permitting process. So they had to value engineer what they could.
All right.
So when they did that, but I guess I'm only
Not
repeating
faulting
it
what they did.
because not everybody understands
Right.
the history of part of it. So ultimately, that wasn't what they intended there.
Well, I personally thought the design that was submitted was exceptional. Oh, wait a second.
Oh, that was-
I'm sorry, I forgot about that. No, it's interesting though, the design.
Author, yes, right.
The design did take into consideration though, the fact of all the activity that does take place under that oak tree. And by actually creating a retaining wall and actually putting a barrier up, that you would protect that tree.
Right, that's the other aspect.
Right now, there's no protection.
There's no
Yeah.
protection. for the
That
tree.
was one of the benefits of it.
Yeah.
And as far as ADA application, we didn't do anything to the existing walkway. So all of the AD ramps and all the AD access is still intact. And the steps that were put in on the oak tree side of that area were all 6-inch rises and long landing areas. So it was actually very easy for people of my age or greater to actually access it. So I saw a lot of benefits into it. We would shrink, though, a little bit of lawn area as we came out away from the oak tree.
Yeah.
That is realistic. But again, we shouldn't be under that oak tree anyway, so.
Okay, we've got a couple more slides and then we're
Yeah,
done and
very
we're almost
good.
out of time, but.
Yeah. Thanks again for doing that. guys.
Yeah, you're welcome. We have a youth committee that our former youth commissioner, Maya Gilbert, spearheaded. She's gone on to college, so we are looking for a new youth commissioner, but intending to move forward with this youth committee. And the goal is to provide programming for junior high and high school students to kind of fill a gap in our offering. So we've been looking at what teens are interested in and had learned some challenges with trying to get teens together to organize and plan things. So a lot of learning there. And I think one of the great ideas that came out of this work was a set of workshops on life skills that teenagers expressed a lot of interest in, that we called #adulting. And couldn't implement because of a few challenges, timing kind of not overlapping with SAT prep courses and other things going on at the high school, locations, lining up instructors at times that worked, in between high school or middle school events. So with all of that in mind, and hopefully having a new youth commissioner this fall, we're hoping to move forward with some of those activities.
Well, I'd like to donate a washer and dryer to that activity center so we could teach the youth how to do their own laundry. I mean, it's imperative that I learn that at a certain age, so I see the benefits of that.
You might open that up to adults as well.
I don't know about, when I see balancing a checkbook, I don't know how many of us use checkbooks anymore, but it'd be interesting to actually offer something. I mean, there's some pivotal.
And
Yeah.
this is what we're hearing from teenagers.
Real
that
important things for life lessons that they just don't offer anymore at the high school.
They
level.
used to teach that in a home ec course, where
Right.
you learn to cook, you learn to do
Yeah,
laundry, you learn to
exactly,
organize.
Exactly.
Well, and they brought up, which I thought was great, how to change a tire. There
I was
there
just
a
thinking about
request-
that.
No, there was a request for
My
like
millennial
basic
nephew
automotive.
called from West Texas. How do I change the tire? I'm broken down. Well, you get the manual out and you read it.
But the girls, there was a group of girls actually, I think they were at the meeting, who had
Yeah.
requested like a, kind of a automotive light on how to
Well,
do those
I taught
things.
my daughters, and so when my daughters would go out on dates in high school, and the
they
guy's
couldn't
car
break
would
down.
break down, my daughters would call me and they'd fix the car.
All right, a couple more slides. We've got a couple more minutes. Let's just get through these. So naming policy, this is another request of the councils, was for us to work on a naming policy for naming facilities and the placement of plaques and memorials in parks. This was work that the commission had started several years ago and never completed. So now Commissioner Murphy and the recreation staff have kind of picked that up again. We've reviewed the existing draft document as a commission and given them feedback, and now they're working on revising that. So hopefully we'll have something for you all coming soon. And then lastly, this slide should look familiar from last year, but we still have a committee to explore the concept of a valley-wide parks district, kind of understanding what kind of potential would come out of that, what the process would be to create such a district, and what the implications of it would be. So just kind of research and
How often has
reporting.
that committee been meeting?
It has not.
Okay. all right.
Is it formed?
Yes,
Just
Commissioner
recently.
Intner is
Oh,
on it.
okay. Are you the chair?
And I just joined.
Are you the chair?
I'm one of the members.
Yeah,
You're-
it's just
No
the two of
chair,
us.
two
Just the two of
members.
us, yes.
We're co-chairing.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
But I just accepted that, and we had discussed
So,
having our first meeting.
All of available information should go to you guys.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, We are now approaching the time for transition to council meetings, so we thank you all for your participation.
Before we
Yes,
go off
Sadie?
the mic, though, can we make a pitch to anyone who's watching who has a youth in mind that they think might be an excellent candidate for our commission? We are actively looking for a youth commissioner, so.
Okay.
Is there an age?
High school.
High school.
High school.
Yes.
Sophomore, I believe.
Yeah, contact the clerk's,
Sophomore,
yeah, contact the
junior.
clerk's office, and actually the
For those of you
application
at
should be
home with
online.
a sophomore or
Yes.
junior who would like to participate in
Or
your local
senior.
Or
government.
senior
and-
even,
Seniors
yeah.
can
You
Or
do a
senior,
senior, we'll take you
right.
for 1 year.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
once a month.
And Commissioners, thank you again for all that you do.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all.